Just about to get started. Thank you for everybody who is already here. I appreciate you showing up, but we are going to get started in like another minute or two. Good evening, sunflowers. Hey, everybody. First of all, welcome in. Thank you for being here. What's up, Chris? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm glad to hear that answer. Speaking of that, I have a question for you guys as we're getting started. And the question is I did post it in the chat. And the question is, have you been to therapy? Actually, there's several questions. Have you been to therapy? Has it worked for you? Or if you haven't been to therapy, is there any particular reason why you haven't gone or that you don't want to go? Basically, I want you guys to share with me your experience with therapy in the chat if you do not mind, because that is what we are going to be covering this evening. So, and I just want to say, especially since Chris is in the chat, that I got this idea from him. Basically, he was doing a live stream. I caught it on my Instagram this morning, yesterday, whatever day it was. You know what day it was better than I do. But yeah, I happened to see his live on his Instagram, and they were I'm not really sure what the topic was because I kind of came in the middle, but they were discussing, the topic of therapy and how, whether or not therapy actually is a good option for people, not just individually, but also in relationships. So they just wanted to know, what was a person's stance on that and yada, yada. So, I want to say thank you to Chris for, first of all, giving me the idea. And, thank you. It was yesterday. So yeah, thank you so much for giving me the idea and letting me borrow it. But I do want to give you your credit because what y'all were talking about was great. I do have that linked in the flower box below. So after y'all watch this, take some time to go check that out too. They were having a really good discussion over there. So anyway, let's see. Tier says, "Hey T, I have been, but it took me a while to find a therapist that I meshed well with, and it helped point me in the right direction." Thank you for saying that because that is definitely something I'm going to cover tonight as well, and I appreciate your answer. Mwah. But yeah, guys, so tonight we are going to discuss what is therapy and what are the pros and cons of therapy based on what I've learned, as well as love you too, as well as what therapy was like from my personal perspective. So to go ahead and get the housekeeping part out of the way one more time, I'm going to ask the question, and then we're going to move on to what our topic actually is. So one more time, have you been to therapy? What was your experience with therapy? And if you haven't gone, is there a reason that you haven't gone, or are you even opposed to therapy in any way? My question is basically, what is your experience with therapy in general? So while I cover this housekeeping, I want y'all to put that in the comments or in the chat. So For those of you who are new to this channel, have not seen my face before, and I have not had the pleasure to speak with you myself, what's up, sunflowers? My name is Brenda, and welcome again to BPD Squared. On this channel, I cover mental health topics. So I started BPD Squared back in 2019 after being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. Hence why I call it BPD Squared. I'll tell y'all the story one of these days. But anyway, I started on Instagram and then slowly transitioned myself to YouTube in hopes of finding more people who were like me, who were going through the same things that I was going through, who were dealing with dual diagnosis, who was a woman, a Black woman like me, and just people who I felt I could connect with to gain understanding of what I was going through, and also to just really open up the floor to the conversations with people about what these illnesses are and just mental health in general. So with that said, I do want it to be clear and known that I am not a licensed medical professional. So therefore, I'm not able to give any psychiatric or therapeutic or counseling advice. I am not able to diagnose anyone. But what I can and will do on this platform is share my experience, my research, and the lessons that I've learned along the way to hopefully give you guys some insight into what it's like living with a mental illness, and also just kind of giving you a general overview of what this illness can be like. However, if you or a loved one is experiencing a mental health crisis at all, let me transition this over. I definitely want you guys to refer to these resources here. There is also a link in my description box or my flower box that will take you to a page on my website. All of these links are there. You just click and they'll take you straight to the website. There's phone numbers, as you can see. They even have chat lines. There's different groups for different needs, and they cater to different types of people. So it all just depends on what your needs are and what's necessary for you at that time. They also have a database that you can check into to find local help in your area. So if you're not sure about any clinics or hospitals that cater to your specific needs, there's a database there that can help you find that. So again, if you or someone is suffering from a mental health crisis and you need the help of a professional, please, please, please use these resources. So moving forward from there, let me pull my script back up. And so moving forward from there, the final thing I want to say to you guys is, being that this is a mental health channel, I do get into topics that may be triggering, upsetting, uncomfortable for some people. So with that, I do want to make sure that I'm issuing a trigger warning to people. When I finish my lives and I put the information out there, I do my best to put timestamps so you guys know when to check in and when you check out. So because personally, I'd rather you watch my content safely than to risk it just for me to get a like and a view. So definitely watch my content at your own discretion. If you feel that anything I may be saying or doing could make you feel like you're unsafe or put you in an uncomfortable position, I have no problem. Please click off. I'd rather you take care of yourself than to just give me a view. But otherwise, the content normally has timestamps on it. So if you did have to check out and you got to come back in, hopefully that'll be easy for you. So that way you can still, catch up on the content and know what was going on. But other than that, I just want to give a general trigger warning to let you know, hey, we talk about some heavy stuff on here. So, it may get deep. So, and it may get deep without any warning. So just a general covering over it all, just so you know, general trigger warning. And, take my story and my experience as just an example. Please do not take it as a rule of what to expect to see from every single person who may have the same diagnosis as me or even has the same experience as me. My experience is my experience alone. It's just an example, not a rule. All right. So thank you guys for letting me get that out. But we are going to move forward into what is therapy. So therapy, as we see here, one definition that I found on Google is treatment that is intended to relieve or heal a disorder or therapy is a treatment of mental conditions by verbal communication and interaction. So, with that, the latter definition pertains to us more tonight because, as we know, there's a such thing as physical therapy. You know, you go to a doctor, you hurt your foot, and they, take you to a process of learning how to function it again and get it back to working normally again. So, the same thing as the physical therapy, we transition that to the mental therapy, which they actually consider to be psychotherapy or talk therapy. So, with dealing with mental disorders, it's not a visible thing like a broken leg or a cut finger or anything like that. The way that they go about treating mental problems is with talk therapy, because honestly, how else do you fix it if you don't talk about it? And so, some of the most common forms of therapy, um, some of the most common forms of therapy, especially when we're talking about talk therapy, the most common is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is a general therapy that you basically just try to get to the root of your problems, get to the root of what is causing you any distress or concern, and helping you redirect your thinking about that situation. Dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, is derived from, I should say, CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, but it is intended for people with BPD specifically because it more focuses on the behaviors that a person with BPD exhibits, like the suicide ideations or feelings of emptiness and things of that nature. So it has very specific things that cater to that diagnosis itself. Other types of talk therapy that I just discovered, some of them I just discovered, is emotion focused therapy, or EFT, which obviously focuses on your emotions and is used commonly in those who suffer from depression or eating disorders or trauma. Play therapy, which I'm sure we've heard of before, is mostly used with children, and it is a evidence-based therapy. So it's where they use tangible objects to gain understanding and meaning from the child's perspective of what could have set on the trauma that they have experienced. And of course, we've heard of this before, but there's also group therapy, which is where you're in a room with a group of people. Sometimes, most of the time, it's strangers, and you all kind of share your experiences with each other, and you gain understanding and clarity about your diagnosis and the things you're going through each other's stories and experience. Kind of what I'm trying to do here. And then finally, there's family therapy, where it's basically the same thing as group therapy, but you're sitting down with your actual family members. And it's more effective, I believe, if there is a considerable problem within the root of the family itself and something that the whole family is working through at the time. So I've heard this question as well. Who is therapy actually for? Personally, I feel therapy is for everybody. Regardless if you're diagnosed or not, we all going through something. We all have been through something. And I will eventually get into the pros and cons of therapy later on this evening, of course. But I do want to say quickly that, one of the things I like about therapy and why I think it's good is because you're going to someone who is basically trained to tell you how to think. I'm sorry, that sounds really bad. No, you're going to somebody who's trained to help you learn how to think in a different way. Let's put it like that. And they are actually trained to redirect your thinking. Like I said before, they're trained to redirect your thinking. They're trained to make you see things in different perspectives and to take yourself out of destruct mode and put you in more productive mode, destructive mode to productive mode. And That's not saying that you can't get that from, your friends and family or whatever, but that's literally the sole purpose of a therapist. So, that's one of the things for me. But if I were to say who is therapy specifically for, I would say it's for whoever wants therapy. And I know that sounds like a kind of a-hole like answer, but when you really think about it, I've seen plenty of people who have expressed, well, let me rephrase that. Plenty of people have expressed to me that they would like to go to therapy. They know they need to go to therapy and they considered going to therapy, but it's just the fact of opening up to a complete stranger is something that, makes them hesitate. And I can understand that. I completely understand that. Um, and I've seen people go into therapy and they're very resistant, especially if it wasn't 100% their choice to be there in the first place. So I would say, who is therapy for? Therapy is for the person who is ready to do the hard work to go through therapy. Because therapy is hard. I'm not going to lie to you, especially if you're uncovering some stuff that you didn't even know was there. Therapy's hard, but I have found it beneficial. Again, I'll share my story very soon, but I found it very beneficial. Let's see. And that's pretty much it for that. So again, for everybody else who's in the chat, if you're joining the chat later or if you are watching the replay, first of all, thank you for joining. Second of all, I did pose the question earlier. Has therapy worked for you? Have you been to therapy? Is therapy worth it to you in general? So I definitely would love to hear you guys' answers, and I look forward to seeing it in the chat. But otherwise, I'm going to move on to... Okay. Otherwise, we're going to move on and I'm going to explain to you guys what my therapy experience was like and to give you kind of just some insight into what you might encounter. So again, this is my story. This is my experience. I'm not saying that this is going to be something that I'm not saying this is something to expect. And I'm not saying that this is something that could even happen. But I do feel it necessary to share because, you just want to be, I guess, I just want to make people aware, I guess. Anyway, excuse me. So I did mention just a few minutes ago, that when you go to therapy, you do want to be ready for it. You do want to be prepared for it. And when I first decided to go to therapy, it actually didn't go the way I expected it to. I was about to say the way I wanted it to, but it did not go anywhere close to the way I expected it to. As a matter of fact, my very first therapy session, right after I was basically going to the hospital. So, and I've spoken about this already in a previous video. I'll link it down below because I don't remember which one it was. But I shared my hospital stay and psychiatric ward experience and what that was all like. So I won't get too much into that tonight, but basically I went through the whole process of going to the hospital and getting a diagnosis of major depressive disorder, which then led me to get to the psychiatric ward. So I will say, after that therapy session, I could have refused going to the hospital or the psychiatric ward. It wasn't a forced thing for me. I do want to make that clear. Nobody forced me to go. It was my decision to go. But I didn't realize what I was in for by the time everything started happening. So there was that. But like I said, I was ready for the therapy experience, I guess. I was ready for it because at the time I was so depressed. I was harming myself and I was looking to harm other people because I was just feeling so bad. I was feeling so terrible. So I was like, no, we got to figure out how we're going to get past this. I want to get past this. I want to get better. I want to be healed. I want to be better. And so, like I said, it was my choice to go to therapy. It was my choice to go to the hospital. And it was eventually my choice to go to the psychiatric ward. But I do want you to know that depending on the situation, you have a choice. If you don't want to go, if you're not ready to go, I don't think they can force you unless there's a specific reason. It has to be a legal reason behind them forcing you. But if there isn't anything that's detrimental, I want to say, it's like, no, they can't force you to go. So like I said, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna go in here and talk to people, and I'm gonna have this, like when I went to the therapist, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna talk to her, and I'm gonna have this conversation, and we're gonna get down to the reason why I feel like crap. And then I get to the psychiatric hospital, and we're doing group therapy sessions, and it's nothing too major. Like they didn't ask too many personal things as far as I remember. They were more like, we did like little activities and worksheets, and they would give us like information to read upon, like breaking addiction and changing your thought patterns and stuff like that. But what I wasn't prepared for is the fact that after everything I had experienced, so this had happened over like a 3-day span. I went to the therapist, woke up the next morning, went to the therapist, went to the hospital, woke up the next morning, went to get this other diagnosis. And then I think a day or two later, I was in the psychiatric hospital. So over the course of 3 days or so, I'm like experiencing some super trauma, right? So I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, when I first went in, I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to release these thoughts and feelings. Once we got into those group sessions, though, I was like, I don't know how to really open up right now. Like it didn't hit me how hard it really was to open up until I had to open up. Because with all that trauma that I had experienced in those couple of days, on top of all the trauma I was experiencing leading to it, I was just, I guess, overwhelmed. And I wasn't able to really just process what was really going on in my mind. So I ended up, just basically cutting it off. And I cut off my mind, basically. I was kind of separated from everything, and I just gave the answers that I could fathom at the time and just moved through the best I could. But so my first official therapist then, after leaving the psychiatric ward, so the facility I stayed at also had, it was basically a private practice, and it also had an office, a private office that they worked with as well. And so I went to their office to meet with my therapist, and she was a very nice lady, very nice, very gentle with me. She was an older white lady, and at least I believe she was white. I apologize if she isn't, but I think she's white. And I eventually got to a part where I parted ways with her. And in hindsight, I do realize I split on her. I don't remember what she said or what upset me so much, but I know I asked her for something and she wasn't able to reciprocate that, or she wasn't giving me the answer I wanted, I guess. And I got very upset about it. And eventually I just, I parted ways with her, but she did, before I left, recommend me to another therapist. So moving on from her, I got to this other guy who was a black male, and I want to say he was probably about 10, 15 years older than me, maybe. And for the most part, he was cool, but we kept running into these issues where it just seemed like we could never meet the right times. So say like my appointment was probably at 10, but I was in the mindset that it started at 11. So it's like, it would either be 9 or 10 or 10 to 11 or 11 to something. And it was just always a confusion trying to figure out, okay, what time is it? Like, when are we actually going to meet up? And I got to a point where I was like panicking because I'm like, yo, we're not actually meeting. Like, we're not talking and I don't know what's going on. So eventually, needless to say, I ended up not going back to him anymore. Which, okay, I have a question for anybody who's actually been in therapy, like for a diagnosis thing. Has a doctor ever asked you, or a therapist ever asked you, and y'all forgive me for saying this, but I just want to know, has a doctor ever asked you how often you masturbate? Because he asked me that, and I felt like it was kind of a weird question. Because I'm like, bro, who asked that? And what does that have to do with mental? Like, what does that have to do with my diagnosis? I was so confusion. But at the same time, I was like, is this normal? Is this part of the therapy? I don't know. So y'all please let me know in the comments in the chat if you've ever been to a therapist. Has that ever come up in a conversation at all? Please let me know, because I was wholly confused. Huh. Exactly. Chris said, huh? Exactly. I was wholly confused. Anyway, like I said, needless to say, I stopped seeing him, and I didn't have a therapist for a while. I don't remember how long it was. Maybe about a year. I don't know. But I eventually did get another therapist after going to the psych ward the second time. And after being there for a few days, they assigned me a different therapist. So they assigned me a therapist, I should say. And it was kind of a weird situation because I was like, I didn't actually meet with my therapist for like a month or two. Time is a very terrible thing for me. So it could have, I want to say it was about 2 months in though. Because I know I went there, met with my psychiatrist, hated her immediately, and then was told that I was going to have a therapist, but never saw the therapist until later on. And so when I finally did get a therapist, it wasn't the person I was supposed to have that they told me about. It was a different lady. So they did put me with a black woman who was around my age. I want to say she's probably about 2 or 3 years older than me. And, you know, at the time we actually had great sessions, to be honest. We met every week and we talked for an hour every week. And sometimes it would go over because our conversations were actually just that good. And so, yeah, we had those conversations. She was actually very, very beneficial to me at that time frame. She was the reason I stayed on my medication. She was the reason I kept up with my appointments with my psychiatrist. Because again, I say I could not stand her, and I let her know, and I let my therapist know I don't like this woman. I don't want to go see her. But I did it because, I felt that I had somebody in my corner who was, encouraging me to just, push through regardless. And unfortunately, though, it got to a point where she made a decision that she wanted to work in a different facility. So that meant that she could no longer be my therapist. And of course, that hurt like hell because I'm like, yo, we didn't spend all this time building this relationship. Well, not really relationship, this therapist patient relationship. I've spent all this time divulging to you my problems. She's even told me her problems. We've talked kind of like friends. It was cool. But at the same time, it's like, yo, you're leaving me, and this to me is why I can understand why breakups are so traumatizing for people, because you spend all this time investing in a person. You spend all this time letting this person invest in you. You spend this time, redirecting your thought processes, your thought patterns, and your mannerisms and behaviors and things to accommodate a way that suits the relationship. You know what I mean? So with me and my therapist, it's a matter of this is a person that is helping me see myself in a better light, see myself in a way that can be healed, see myself in a way that's more productive. And for someone to be just Well, and I don't want to say it as if she was just like, "If you, I'm leaving." No, I'm not saying it like that. But it is a matter of when you're in that position and somebody is like, "Oh, well, by the way, I got to deuce out." It is kind of rejecting. You know what I mean? It's really hard, and it was very hard for me because, as I've mentioned time and time again, BPD, fear of abandonment, being abandoned by someone who was so beneficial to me was a hard thing to deal with. And I had so much resentment, not towards it was interestingly too, because it wasn't towards her, but I took my resentment out on my psychiatrist because y'all, she was just trash, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't like to talk negatively about people in that way, but she needs to be better. She does. She needs to learn how humans work. She doesn't know how humans work. And she caused me more trauma than she fixed. So I'll get into that in another video cuz anyway. But just basically like I said, I spent a good part of the year getting to know this woman. Letting this woman get to know me in a way that I didn't even know myself, and we're both coming to learn who I am, learning to trust me, learning to trust myself, and for that to just be over and done with in a flash was whew, it was a lot to take in. So she did the same thing that the previous their therapist did and recommended me to another person that worked within the facility that she felt would be good for me and was a good match, because she was like, yeah, I think she's cool, you'll like her, and she's kind of like you in a way. I forgot what she said, but she tried to sell me, and I was just like, I don't really care, I'm just gonna talk to somebody. Right? So her and that other guy shouldn't be in that field, honestly. Honey, we're gonna talk about it later. Hey, Diane. But yeah, so moving forward with that, she, like I said, recommended me to another therapist, and turns out that this therapist she recommended me to was the therapist I was supposed to have in the first place. So that was fun. But eventually, we got to talking, and she was another Black woman who was, she was older than me. I don't know how many years, but she was older than me. And she gave me kind of like a mama feel, which was kind of cool. She made me feel comfortable. She made me feel understood. She was very soft spoken, gentle with me. So it was cool. I appreciated that. But at the same time, we ran into some issues too, where we did meet bi-weekly, but for some reason, and I want to say it was because of my psychiatrist, but for some reason, we got to a point where she just stopped responding to me. Because I would reach out, I would text, I would call, and I'd be like, hey, are we having a session? What's going on? Da, 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 da. And I try to reach out to her, figure out what's going on. And I don't know if it was time issues again, or if it was something that had to do with my psychiatrist, because y'all, like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about it. But my psychiatrist is the kind of person that will tell me so mind you, this is like 2021, coming right off of COVID, still have to be masked up. She's telling me I have to come to the clinic in person so that I can have my session with her, right? I have to come to the clinic in person, have my session. I got to be masked up just for me to have to wait for her for 45 minutes to sit in an office and speak to a screen. So basically, I'm doing this with her. You're telling me I have to leave my house in COVID world and come talk to you via video screen because you're not finna risk yourself coming out your house. Bet. That was cool. Yeah. So that got on my nerves. But possibly part of that contributed to the fact of me not interacting with my therapist anymore, because I don't know if it was them saying that I was missing appointments or if it was that it was just a huge line of miscommunication. Like I said, y'all, I really don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. She just all of a sudden communication just stopped. She stopped calling me. She stopped taking my calls. I didn't know what happened. And then of course after that was a point of just a whole bunch of shite. A whole bunch of shite happened. So okay, I get that. I get that a lot of what I said probably doesn't put anybody in a good mind space for therapy, because I know I've said a lot of, you know, what the heck kind of stuff, and I admit that. But at the same time, I can honestly say that even though a lot of those experiences didn't end well for me, I still benefited from therapy. I can honestly say that. I did benefit from what I was able to get from those people and from those therapists. The fact that, you know, I was able to open myself up when I could, the fact that I was able to ask questions and be led to, like T said, it was something that helped point me in the right direction. So if there was something that I wasn't sure about or something that I wasn't clear about on my own self, I could ask those questions. I could bring it up. And even if they didn't know the answer, they pointed me in the direction of finding the answer. So it encouraged me to do more research. It encouraged me to learn myself more and to, you know, just gain more perspective as to what it is I'm actually going through. So, like I said, honestly, as much as I went through some crap, I can point out the good parts of it and say that it was beneficial for me as far as a learning, you know, perspective. But with that, let me take a breath and ask, how's everybody doing? I want to say hello to everybody. T, Chris, Diana. There was somebody else in here, but I don't remember who it was. Okay, anyway, whoever's all here, thank you so much. I love you for being here. And to everybody who watches later, I love you as well. Thank you for, you know, a view and definitely for a like. Right? Okay. Anyway, let's I want to get into so like I mentioned earlier, I want to get into the pros and cons of therapy. So I kind of covered some of the cons of therapy. Um, you know, the fact of ever changing things, things that can change without a moment's notice. Um, so I guess a con for some people. I understand the whole I have to talk to a complete stranger thing. So like I said, I mentioned that earlier and I wanted to go more in depth on it now. The whole complete stranger thing and talking to someone who they have no idea who you are and you have no idea who they are. Personally, that's a pro for me. And it's because there's no bias there. At least there shouldn't be any bias there because they don't have any prior investment in you, right? They don't really know you outside of what you may have shared in a session or a meeting or your background information that you gave them, right? They don't really know you like that to draw any specific conclusions or, you know, give you any answers that are tailored to make you feel more comfortable or anything like that. So I personally appreciate having a therapist who doesn't know anything about me, because then when I'm asking the question, they can give me an upfront, non-biased answer. Now, like I mentioned before, in Chris's live chat, one of the young ladies, please, if you're still in the chat, Chris, I don't know her name, please let me know who this was. But one of the young ladies answered the question of saying, because one of the guys was like, hey, you know, how do you feel about therapy and what do you think it's beneficial for relationships or just beneficial in general? And the young lady mentioned, well, you know, I personally would want to go to someone I know. I would rather choose to go to family and friends because they actually, like I said before, they actually know me and they would know how to respond to me if I'm going through something, right? Like if I'm distressed about something, if I'm crying about something, if I'm upset, about something, I will want to go to a person who I know is going to comfort me in a way that I'm used to being comforted versus going to a total stranger who wouldn't know how to comfort me, but they would know how to address me, if that makes sense. So I mean, I honestly, like I said before, I don't want anybody who's going to be 100%, oh, baby, it's okay. Because personally, I don't like the whole, oh, baby, it's going to be okay and it'll be fine. Sometimes you want that. But when I'm really distressed and I'm really going through something and I want a real answer, I don't want the babying part. I want you to be like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to realize. This is what needs to happen. And I feel like with friends and family, they're great for the comfort, but not all the time. Let me not say never, but not all the time are you going to get the answers you need. Let's put it like that. You'll get what you want, but you won't always get the answers you need. So for me, going to a complete stranger is a pro, but I know that that could be a varying thing for most people. Another thing that I personally take as a con, like I just, got through talking about, is the fact that it may take a while to find a therapist that works. And it can depend on the facility. It can depend on the therapist themselves. It can depend on your budget. It can depend on your time. Things can change at a moment's notice. And my thing was also when like I said, 2022 is around the time that I stopped going to that specific facility or that specific clinic. Because in the span of 2 months, they switched me to like 3 different caseworkers. So I had all these people calling me trying to figure out what was going on with me, and nobody knows because everybody's new to me. And I'm like, okay, so that's not distressing at all. And on top of that, like I said, it's just discouraging to keep changing like that because me dealing with BPD, change is not comfortable for me. And I'm not saying that I'm opposed to change. I'm okay with change. I'm not okay with abrupt changes, and I'm not okay with slighted changes. Is that the way I want to put that? Basically, change in certain aspects, like I said, with the whole, oh, here's a new caseworker. Okay, your other caseworker is gone. Oh, never mind, we're changing you to somebody else. Oh, wait, that person had to move on. We're changing you to somebody else. That, to me, is what caused my issue, is the fact, like, when you're changing like that, it feels like rejection to me. It feels like you're being rejected constantly because you're trying to trust somebody with your information, trying to trust somebody with your mind, and then all of a sudden it's like, never mind, somebody else, never mind, somebody else. So it's very rejecting. First of all, hello, ma'am. You know exactly who I'm talking to. Thank you so much for joining the chat. BPD requires a specific type of therapy. It doesn't sound like you have had any of that. Therapists should never discuss themselves. That's when you run for the hills. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And yes, I did mention that earlier, that and for those who are coming into the chat now, first of all, hey, Sunflower. Second of all, we are discussing therapy and what my experience was like with therapy, if therapy is actually worth it, and how it can affect somebody with BPD, me. And I did mention earlier that there are different forms of therapy when it comes to mental health, which is, they call it psychotherapy or talk therapy. So as Kathy mentioned, BPD is, well, what they use for BPD is DBT. CBT is also the kind of overall talk therapy spectrum, just to really get you into redirecting your thinking. And again, DBT is used for people with BPD because it focuses, there's a lot of acronyms, because it focuses on the more harmful behaviors and redirecting your thinking from that as well. So thank you so much for that comment. Answer my phone call. Anyway, so moving forward, I did talk about the con. Yeah, the con is, just to finish that off, con of therapy. It can take a while to actually find a therapist that works for you, that meshes with you, and that makes you feel comfortable to really have, these open conversations. But another pro is that, for me, it's a pro. Like I said, you're paying this person to talk to them, right? And my thing is, they're literally there for you to talk to them about you. It's all about you in the therapy session. And that's what they're there for. So if anything else, because sometimes we feel like we go to family and friends and we really want to vent about stuff. And we have to understand that friends and family, they're great for getting those things off your chest, coming to them and having to, share those things. But at the same time, we as humans don't always have the capacity to handle all of our friends and family's problems. And your friends and family may not have the capacity to handle everything you have to drop on them as well. My rule of thumb is to always ask beforehand, do you have the capacity for me to vent right now? And I always say, in response to that, do you need to vent or do you want advice? So there's those things for me. But one of the things about, like I said, with a therapist is that their primary job is to listen to you. So if you feel like there's nobody out there who is really trying to listen to your problems and really help you with your problems, that might be a great place to start. Because they can actually help you. Also, like I said before, they're trained to help you navigate those thoughts, redirect your thinking processes, teach you how to process your thoughts in a more healthy, productive way. At least a good therapist is supposed to do that. So to finish this off, I do find therapy is needed. I find therapy is beneficial, and it has been a great tool for me to pull from in my own personal life. I personally have not seen a therapist, been to a clinic, or been on medication for a year. Sure. Oh, thank you. I love you. Yeah, I haven't seen a therapist, been to a psychiatrist, been to a clinic, been, all that stuff. I hadn't done that stuff. It's been about a year. I'm not going to say I'm doing well, but I'm functioning. But from what I did gather from my experience, what I did gather from my time with my therapist, I can say that I learned some valuable skills for myself that I have been passing off to my friends and family. And I hope in what I've been sharing with you guys has been helpful to y'all. And, it's one of the reasons why I started this channel as well. Because I'm like, I went through some things and I felt, with me having an experience coming on and sharing the experience with you all is, like I said, just another way to kind of really open that conversation with more and more people. Because like I said, I've been hearing people talk about, going to therapy and stuff, but some people really aren't sure if therapy is a good thing. They really aren't sure if that's something that they will benefit from. And I know that there's still a lot of people who look like me who are still under the stigma that therapy isn't for us. I'm here to tell you, therapy is for everyone. Do not buy into the hype and the stigma that just because you are of a certain ethnicity and hue of skin, that you are not allowed the right to also find help for yourself. You have every right to go out and seek help for yourself. You deserve healing as well. You deserve to be treated as well. And again, it's your basic human right to be able to take care of yourself. So don't let nobody ever tell you that you can't do this and can't do that just because you look a certain way. Okay, so I'm glad you said that because I don't know if you were in the chat when I said this earlier. So Kathy just said, run if anyone asks you about sexual habits or history unless you are seeing a sex therapist. So like I said earlier, y'all, this guy asked me about, so Kathy, this guy asked me about how often I masturbated or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know how that pertains to what I'm doing here, but I want y'all to take that home with you for real, for real. If they are not a sex therapist, if they are not directly working on helping you with that kind of trauma, and that's actually something I can't really speak on, but I will say if those kind of questions come up and that's not what you came there for, because okay, think about it like this. That's like you go to the doctor for a hurt foot, but they keep asking you about your hand. It's like, that doesn't make sense. That don't go with that. So that is something to look out for. Definitely. I will say a con about therapy is that look out for what they're asking you and the information that they want you to provide, and if it actually has something to do with what you're actually trying to be treated for. That's a thing too. So anyway, with that being said, again, I want to thank everybody for joining the chat this evening. Thank you so much for joining and giving me that wonderful insight, because I definitely needed that. Needed that to be added in, because I feel like a lot of people need to see that. But outside of that, guys, that we're at the end, basically. Again, thank you for joining. Make sure if you found this live to be helpful and informative and necessary for your time, please leave a like on this video. Again, if you are watching this after the live, and please comment what your experience with therapy is. If you've ever been, if you've never been, if you plan on going, if you don't plan on going, whatever your experience with therapy is, please leave it down below, because I would love to know what, I would love to just have the additions to the conversation just to kind of help other people figure out, okay, what is it that I have to expect, or just what is it that will happen, could or would or should happen. As a matter of fact, share this video too. If there's anybody that you feel needs to know this information and they are not sure what to expect, if they've been considering therapy and they're not sure what to expect, share this video with them. Hopefully my experience will kind of give them some insight. It'll probably scare the living crap out of them, to be honest. But hopefully it'll give you some insight as to what you may encounter, not to expect, but what you may encounter when dealing with therapy. And of course, I want to say thank you to every single one of you guys who are subscribed to my channel, and encourage more and more people to come through and to subscribe as well, because we're on the road to 1,000, y'all. We're almost there. We're like, what, 200 away? So we can do that. I know we can do that before we hit the end of this year, right? I know we could do that before we hit the end of this year. So again, like, comment, share, subscribe. Encourage more people to become a sunflower and grow this garden. I'm appreciating every single person that comes through. We have great conversations, in my opinion. And if there's anything that you would like to have discussed on this channel, anything that you're concerned about, or anything you want me to do any specific research on to kind of help you out, definitely let me know. Leave it in the comments, leave it in the chat. I want to know what you guys want to hear. I want to know what you guys are concerned about and want to talk about. And it could be almost anything. And I do mean almost anything. So give me your ideas, and don't be mad if I don't pick them, because I probably be like, I ain't going there. So it all depends on how it's going to make other people feel, and, you know, the content matter in general. So once again, I love you guys so much. Thank you again for joining. Thank you for becoming a sunflower. And until next time, stay square. I love you so much. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye.